why you must do something crazy with your life. Most of you think you know who you are, you think you know your limitations, but the truth of the matter is, nah, most of us play small in our life. We refuse to try something that we might fail at. That's the problem. You can't fail. A process might fail, a measure might fail, a strategy might fail, but you, my friends, cannot fail. You are a human being and you are constantly evolving, developing, and creating. So you can't fail. That's the first myth you got to be willing to let go is the fact that you think you can fail. You can't. The second thing that you got to let go of is you think you'll die. Yeah, that's your subconscious mind saying you can do whatever you want in this life. But if you go do that, we're going to die. I don't know what that is for you. I'm going to tell you what it is for me. I don't like heights. You will never catch me bungee jumping, but you might catch me jumping out of a plane one day. And I know that seems really weird, but I also want to overcome my fear of heights and do crazy things so that I get to experience the fullness of who I am. And experiencing the fullness of who you are creates the foundation for you to become the person of your dreams. It can only happen after you hit bottom. And I don't mean failure, I mean choice to go to the bottom, tackle your fears, and rebuild. So I want to tell you a little bit about what that can be like. Why I ran a 50-mile race? Well, it was for that reason. You see, I'd moved to Chicago. I was new in town. I had a buddy that lived here as well. And we were trying to figure out, we come from small towns. How can we take who we are, skills and talents, and attract and connect with new people? Well, as a result of that, he had heard about these marathons being ran. Now, when I say heard about, I used to be a runner in high school, but it was track. It was like 400 meters was the longest I was going to run. And so I thought to myself, a marathon, that's not what brothers do. Now I know better than that. But seriously, I was like, no, that's not what I do. I'm not interested. And then I learned that only 1% of the entire world will ever run a marathon. And I thought to myself, oh, that might get me some bragging rights or at least help me stand out so that when I talk to people, I have something to share. That's the second myth. Who you are already has enough to share. You don't have to go do something crazy, college degree, doctorate degree, whatever that crazy is for you, or that written path that somebody told you that's who you have to become. That's what you have to do in order to mean something. I need to say that because too often we think that when we don't achieve that, then we are nobody because we didn't fulfill the script that someone else had gave us in our life. And as a result of that, then we underachieve. We enter into depression. We allow more anxiety in our life. And that spills into every area of our life. We begin to underperform because we think that, going back to number one, we could fail. So I realized that while only 1% of the world's population had ever done it, that I was going to need some help. So we signed up for this marathon training program. And at first, it looked daunting. I'm not gonna lie. Even out the gate, it looked daunting. I was thinking to myself, wait, we're gonna run 3 days a week and a long day on a Saturday. Do you understand? Like the first run was like 3 miles. I'd never ran more than 3 miles at one time in my entire life. And I don't even remember at that time when that was. But I knew that I had to challenge myself to something greater in order to be able to experience me differently. You see, no one made me run the marathon. I chose it because I wanted to find out and discover me in a new way. I knew I had limitations. I knew I hadn't reached my pinnacle. I knew there was more inside of me, but I had been afraid, to be extremely honest. So I signed up for this marathon training run, and it was a 6-month program. So yes, week after week, I had these runs, especially starting out the 30 days at home. I wouldn't do them. I mean, I did them, but it was slow. It would be some walking. I couldn't quite find this rhythm of what I needed to do. So it'd be a lot of running, stop, running, stop. And then it came that first Saturday. And on that first Saturday, there were all these people. I was super excited. I was like, okay, all right, okay, this is different. Okay, maybe I can. And they put me in a group. Now, mind you, I'd never ran more than 3 miles at any one point in time in my entire life. But I was thinking to myself, if I'm going to run, I'm going to run fast. So they put me in a slow group. And I went to the coach. I was like, hey, listen, I used to be in track and I think that I should be in this minute mile group. And she just smiled and said, well, honey, this is something new. You might want to start back where I placed you. And I'm thinking, are you sure? Because I think I can keep up. You know what I mean? Like I'm not slow. And that's like a walking speed. She's like, yeah, trust me. I think I was with the 10-minute mile group, 10 or 11-minute mile group. And after that first run, I was like, oh, okay, this is different. And so we would run 5 minutes, walk 1 minute, run 5 minutes, walk 1 minute, and I thought that was work. Okay, that was work, but I survived, and I think I'm going to stay in this 10-minute mile group. The next several weeks came. I would do my running during the week, strengthening and challenging myself. Right, like okay, you got to get out here by yourself, and you got to push yourself, Marquise, and you got to do the work. And it was hard. Oh my God, it was hard. The number of mornings in Chicago I didn't want to get up. And Saturdays, we ran out on the lake. I lived in a neighborhood 5 miles from the lake. So all that beautiful scenery and inspiration of the water and the sunrise, I was getting none of that. I had trees, homes, and potholes living in Chicago. So I would get up and make myself do my 3 days, mostly in the morning, sometime in the afternoon, and it was lonely. I didn't enjoy the process, but I found myself looking more and more forward to the Saturdays because somewhere in there we started running, a certain mileage, 5, 6 single digit miles on Saturdays, a couple of weeks in a row. And then came the first 10-mile run. I was shook in my boots. I went in my head, and the only thing I could reference was who I used to be. I couldn't see in the moment who I was becoming. Side note, that's a key for you. Who you're becoming can only be acknowledged in the present moment with a quick glance of what you just walked through. But if you only look at who you were, it's going to be difficult to assess that. So I found myself accomplishing the 10-mile run. And yes, it took longer. Yes, it was more difficult. Yes, it was super uncomfortable. But then the weeks kept going. And after a while, 10 miles or 11 miles wasn't that big deal. And then I remembered we're going to do a half marathon. That was a big day because a marathon is 26.2 miles. A half marathon is 13.1. And so on that day, we had been leading up. I saw it on the calendar, on the plan, and the strategy that it was coming up. And I was nervous because at that point, I was running 8 miles at least twice a week on my own. And I thought, there's no way I can do 13.1. But there's a secret. There's a secret that my coaches knew. They knew that if they get me building consistently at a low level and moderately increase it over time, that I was building endurance. Endurance, the thing that you do when you stay consistent, even with little things for a period of time, that builds a foundation that allows you to build on top of it. And so when it was time to run the 13.1, I surprised myself. I was like, whoa, I did it. Like, I did that. I did that thing. And I was so proud of myself. And then 13.1 became the norm. And the next milestone was a 21 miler. And I was thinking to myself, okay, kind of like 13.1. But I began to get a hold of, there was this training that we would do that was consistent during the week that I was building up, that was preparing me. And I began to trust that maybe, just maybe, they're right. And then I was on a run at home. It was a 17-mile run. Let me tell you what happened. On the way, it was going great, by the way. It was going absolutely great until about mile 15. On my way back, mile 15, I don't know what happened to this day. Probably my nutrition was lacking, things that you need to do to support you. This is the kind of stuff that we talk about on this channel. When you're going after something, you got to take care of your nutrition. You got to take care of your mental space. You got to take care of your body because they all show up when you're doing the difficult thing. At mile 15 in Chicago, I found myself sitting down on a curb. in front of a gas station. I literally was like, I can't go any further. So I made a call home. I was like, hey, to my wife at the time, like, can you come get me? She's like, what? I'm like, I can't make it home. So she came and got me, took me home. I didn't ice. I might have ice, but I moved slowly, slowly. Needless to say, when the 21-mile day came, I did run it. I did complete it. I think I slept the entire afternoon that day. I couldn't move. I couldn't move because my body was so worn out. Because again, that side note, I wasn't taking care of my nutrition and things. I didn't know any better. I was doing simple things that weren't making a significant difference. And then along came the marathon. It was the wildest marathon ever. We had all 4 seasons during the marathon. It started out super, super cold. It went sunny and got warm. I took my shirt off, and then it started raining and sleeting. And then we came in, I believe it was dry, but it was just like the weirdest weather. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. It's not weird. It was a regular Chicago day where you can get all 4 seasons in a day. And that stunk. It was not that much fun. But I completed my first marathon. Hang out with me. Someday I'll tell you about my first 50-mile marathon and why I chose to do that. That's what we call an ultra marathon. Meanwhile, I want you to subscribe to this channel, share the story with someone to encourage them to go do something they wouldn't normally do so they can experience a newness of who they are. Because not only am I part of the top 1% now, I completed marathons multiple times, at least 10 times. And I'm super excited to share that with you because I know whatever the thing is that's staring you down, you can do too. And you deserve to be in the likes of the greatest people on the planet. Remember, subscribe to my free VIP channel to get more of this good stuff. Peace.